Hello. Today I'm going to show a game between a very strong player of the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, Siegbert Tarrasch, against a very strong player, but not international level, Edmund Thorold, who was a British, not a professional chess player, but a very strong one, with notable wins against Blackburn and Kizeritsky and other famous player of the 19th century. So let's start with the game. It's a game that is played using the French defense. So the French defense is the first move is e4, e6. This defines the beginning of the French defense, which has many variants. And d4, d5 are the usual moves. Now white has several options: knight c3, knight d2, e5, and others. And in this game, Tarrasch uses knight d5. Black immediately tries to break the center by c5. White takes the d-pawn, the queen takes the d-pawn. White plays knight g to f3. Black takes the queen pawn, which is of course only temporarily taken by black because he cannot hold it. And bishop c4 harasses immediately the queen. The queen goes to h5, and white castles. So you see immediately the difference. White has fully developed three pieces, castled, and black has not developed anything except the queen. But still, it's not a bad position for black. Knight c6, knight b3, attacking the pawn with three pieces, both knights and the queen, and black plays e5. e5 is not a very good move because white can immediately take it, as happened in the game. Better would be continuing the development by knight f6. A normal move, you have to do it anyway sometime, and it's better than e5. White takes the pawn with the knight. Why is it a good move? Of course, the queen cannot take it because the rook will pin the queen and the game is over. If black takes with the knight, it's also very bad because you lose the queen. So, of course, white wouldn't do it. Black wouldn't allow it. So, after knight takes e5, black exchanges the queens. And now white has a few options. He could take the pawn, harass the option of castling for black. Now black has to go with the king, like e7. But after rook takes the queen, knight takes knight, the position is better for black. So white has 6 pawns, black has only 4, but he has a piece. So better to take it with the rook. And now, of course, you can threaten what I just showed you. So after rook takes d1, knight takes knight, He knows, of course, that he will be pinned, but he will give back the piece on his own terms. So protecting the knight with the pawn, but immediately f4, and the knight cannot move because of the rook threatening the king. So black plays bishop b4, threatening the rook. Now, it's not good to move with the rook. Let's say rook e4, and the bishop threatens the rook. He can come back here, but the bishop will threaten him again. And this is not the idea of the play that he wants to play. Okay, so this was the position after bishop b4. Another move that we don't want to play is bishop b5 chess, because the king will return here, and it's not too bad for black. So Tarrasch played bishop d2. Bishop takes d2, knight takes d2, and bishop f5, threatening the pawn. F takes the knight. Now we castle. Very good move, because the rook enters the game, the king is much better protected. And now, what should white play? He can play h3 and threaten g4. He can in the game he played bishop d3, but better would be bishop b3, because this is a strong bishop. Now he protects the pawn. This is a better way to handle the position. Anyway, he played bishop d3, and black immediately exchanges the bishops. Now both of them have an isolated pawn on the d file, and now f takes e5. Rook a to c1 chess, king b8. The idea is to prevent the king to go to the center of the board, which the king is always stronger near the endgame in the center of the board than on the edge. Now, rook takes pawn. Knight finally develops to f6. Rook c to e1. Now, I can understand the idea of doubling the rook on the e file. White had the idea of changing the rooks, exchanging the rooks and entering a pawn endgame, but he had a better option. Again, moving the knight to f3 or b3 would be better in this situation. Maybe also rook e7, threatening the g pawn, would be better. But you can understand the logic of rook ce1. Now black had a real chance to play knight d5, get into e3, but he played something else. He played rook h to e8, helping the white plan by exchanging the rooks. So rook takes e8, knight takes e8, and now we have an endgame that each side has a rook, a knight, and 5 pawns. But you can sense that white has a bit of advantage because the king is a bit nearer to the center. The rook is more effective on the E file than the D file, which is semi-closed. So rook goes to E7, prevents the black from moving the knight because of the pawn. And black plays A6. Now white tries to bring the knight closer, and black prevents it by playing B6, attacking those A5 and C5 squares, but maybe playing something like H5 would be a better defense. Very difficult. Knight takes D4. You should always think about those possibilities. This is not a sacrifice, because if the rook takes the knight, the rook takes the black knight, which is what happened in the game, and white is a pawn up. Now the endgame changes to a king and rook and pawns. Black has 4 pawns, white has 5 pawns. Now there are 2 options. You can play safely and defend the D3 pawn by rook E3, which is what happened in the game. But you could also play rook E7, which is most of the... One moment. One moment. King C7, which is more aggressive. Excuse me. But, and in this case, it could be rook D7, rook takes, or king takes, and it's a very easy technical win for white. But white played safely, rook E3, king D7, king F2, G6, rook H3, threatening the pawn, H5, king E3, rook D6, D4, rook E6, king D3. So this is a classical endgame of 1 pawn advantage to white, and Tarrasch gives us a lesson how to win such an endgame. Rook to E1, rook G3, rooks go back to E6. Rook E3 trying to exchange the rooks, because a pawn endgame is much easier to win. Black declines, of course, and white goes to E5. Rook F6, again trying to get to the F2 square. A4, because he always can return with the rook to E2. And indeed, rook F2, rook E2, rook F6. Now, this is a very interesting move, because white misses something. White plays B4. But much better move would be B3. Why? Because after B4, Black played rook f1, rook e5, and now rook g5 must be prevented. And the correct move would be rook d1. Check. King c4, rook c1, king b3, rook b1, king c3, rook c1, king d3, rook d1, king c4, rook c1, and so on. And black could
threefold repetition.
Could draw the game by threefold repetition. But black played rook f2, which is a mistake. Now, white plays the natural rook g5, which defends the pawn and attacks this one, and black returned to f6. h3. You see slowly, but surely the white pawns are advancing. King d6, king e4, rook e6, rook e5. Of course, if the rooks will be exchanged, it will be much easier to win. Rook comes back to f6, d5, king d7, rook g5, with the idea to go with the king, to advance with the king. King d6, rook g3. Now, the pawns cannot advance. The pawns cannot advance, so the rook must defend the g6 pawn. The only piece that can move is the king. And now again, rook f3 trying to exchange the rooks. Rook d6, and finally king e5. The king advances. Remember always in the endgame, as the pieces are less and less, the king becomes more and more stronger. So remember always to use your king effectively in the endgame. Rook d8, d6, check. Of course, you cannot take it with the rook, because rook d7, I will show it. Rook takes rook d7, and the king moves, takes the rook, I take the rook, and now it's totally lost. Whatever you do, I will arrive much faster and take your pawns and promote it without any problem. King d7, rook f7, king c8, rook c7, king b8, rook c2. Again, I want to advance the king, rook e8, king f6, b5, d7. I don't care about the pawn. d7 will threatens to promote. Rook h8, king e7, rook h7, king d6, rook h8, rook e2, and the threat is rook e8, check. After you exchange, I have a queen, and in this position, Edmund Thorold resigned the game. I hope that you enjoyed this demonstration of superb endgame technique. And the first game you saw by Tarrasch, again, a very strong player, wrote many books about chess, and was a theoretical researcher.